Ever wondered what happens when love takes the long way around? Meet Cal and Mara, whose story begins not with a spark, but with a quiet presence that lingers for years. From college crushes to unexpected reunions, their journey is anything but ordinary. Discover how life's twists can lead to the most extraordinary love stories. Like and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. I'm Cal Bennett, aged 28, residing in a modest two-bedroom house on the outskirts of Denver, Colorado, which I purchased last year. I have a job in logistics analytics for a nationwide supply chain company. It's not glamorous, but it's steady work that pays well and allows me some breathing room, something I've come to value. I live by myself, no pets, no roommates, no partner. You could say I've been leading a quiet life for some time now. But today, I want to share a story I never thought I'd tell anyone. It's something I believed only happened in movies, yet it happened to me. I met Mara Keating during my college years. We both attended Northern Arizona University. She was a year ahead of me and completely out of my league. You know the type, calm, intelligent, naturally beautiful. She wasn't the loudest person in the room, far from it. But she had this quiet presence that just drew people in, including me. I fell for her hard. I mean, really hard. I never felt anything like it. It wasn't just her beauty. It was that everything she said made me want to be a better version of myself. I tried. I really did. I asked her to study together, brought her coffee once, even invited her to a party once or twice. But she never really saw me. Or maybe she did and just wasn't interested. Either way, nothing happened. She was polite, distant, and kind, but she never gave me anything to hold on to. It hurt, honestly, not because she owed me anything, but because I felt something real, and it just went nowhere. Eventually, she graduated. I still remember the day she posted a photo in her cap and gown with some guy I didn't recognize at the time. He turned out to be her boyfriend. Later, her husband. Time moved on. I buried myself in work. I moved to Colorado, bought my house, built some kind of life, but I never found someone like her. I dated, sure, but it always felt like something was missing. I told myself it was just nostalgia. I mean, we were barely even friends in college. But even years later, Mara was the one name that stuck in my mind, always quietly sitting in the back of it. And then a few months ago, I heard something that knocked the air out of me. A guy I used to know from school posted about a plane crash, some small aircraft that went down during a routine flight. I didn't think much of it at first. Then I saw the name Gavin Keating, her husband, the same guy from those old photos. Dead instantly. No survivors. My chest felt tight in a way I hadn't felt in years. I didn't know what to do with the information. I hadn't spoken to Mara in almost a decade. I didn't even follow her on social media. But I couldn't stop thinking about it, about her, about what she might be going through. She'd lost her husband, her life partner. And even though I knew I had no place in her life, I wanted to show up just once, just to be there, not to be seen, just to be present. I found out where the service would be. It was about a 2-hour drive, small town, quiet church. I took a day off work, dressed in black slacks, white shirt, no tie. Drove the whole way in silence. I wasn't planning on speaking to anyone. Hell, I didn't even know if she'd recognize me. When I got there, I parked across the street. The church was already filling up, everyone dressed in somber tones. some holding hands, others wiping their faces with tissues. I stayed in the back. I sat near the last pew. I didn't approach the family, didn't speak to anyone. I just watched. She was there. Of course she was. She looked older, sure, but still so much like the girl I remembered. Maybe even more beautiful. Her face was pale, tired. She didn't cry during the service. She just sat still, hands clasped, staring ahead. I don't know why I thought she wouldn't notice me. Maybe I forgot how observant she always was. Maybe I underestimated how empty a church can feel even when it's full of people. Because as soon as the service ended and people began standing, hugging, murmuring, I turned to leave. I figured I'd done what I came to do. I paid my respects in silence. That was enough. Then I heard her voice behind me. Calculations. I turned around. She stood there in front of me. Same eyes, same voice. A little more fragile, a lot more human. You came, she said quietly. I nodded. I didn't want to intrude. I just wanted to pay my respects. She looked down for a second, then back at me. Don't leave yet, she said. Please just stay a little while. And I did. I wasn't sure what to expect when Mara asked me to stay. I hadn't seen her in nearly a decade, and now here she was, newly widowed, standing in front of me after her husband's funeral, asking me not to leave. There was a long pause between us, like neither of us quite knew what to do next. People were still moving around the church, hugging, whispering, shuffling out quietly. Mara glanced over her shoulder, then back at me. There's a place a few blocks away, she said softly. It's quiet. We could get a cup of tea or something. If you have time, I nodded. Yeah, of course. She walked her car, and I followed mine. We didn't speak until we got to the cafe. It was tucked on the corner of an old street, one of those small town places with big windows and wooden booths that had been there longer than we had been alive. She parked and waited for me to walk up before going in. There were only a few people inside, a couple sitting by the window, a man on a laptop in the back. That was it. We took a booth near the far wall. The waitress came by, and Mara ordered chamomile tea. I just said, same. Neither of us was really there for the tea. At first, we sat in silence. I think we were both still figuring out why we were even sitting there together. I didn't expect to see you, she said finally, staring at the table at the church. I mean, I wasn't sure I should come, I admitted. I didn't want to make anything about me. When I heard what happened, I couldn't stop thinking about you. I just wanted to be there, even if you never saw me. She nodded slowly. I'm glad you came. It was overwhelming seeing someone from before all this. It reminded me that I used to be someone else. There was a sadness in her voice that didn't feel theatrical or forced, just quiet exhaustion. I know we weren't close, I said, but you matter to me a lot more than you probably ever realized. She looked up. I remember, she said. You used to leave those little notes on my desk in that philosophy class. I smiled, surprised. I didn't think you ever noticed. I did, she said. I didn't know what to do with them. I was in a weird place back then, focused on grades, internships. I had tunnel vision. I didn't know how to handle attention I didn't expect. I didn't want to make this about the past. Now, when the weight of the present was so heavy, I'm sorry about Gavin, I said gently. Her lips pressed together for a moment. She nodded. It still doesn't feel real, she said. He flew those kinds of routes hundreds of times. It was supposed to be routine. One mechanical failure and everything just stopped. They told me the plane dropped off radar mid-flight. No time to react, just gone. Her voice didn't crack. If anything, it was too steady. I keep waking up and thinking I'll hear his keys in the door, she added, but it's always quiet. I didn't know what to say. There's nothing you can say to that. So I just sat with her. Let the silence exist without trying to fill it. You look different, she said after a while. You used to be so nervous. I laughed under my breath. Yeah, well, time and spreadsheets will do that to you. She smiled just slightly. What do you do now? I work in logistics analytics, basically figuring out how stuff gets from point A to point B and why it's late. That sounds like something you'd be great at. She said, you always had that focused energy. We talked for nearly an hour. The tea came and went untouched for the most part. She told me about meeting Gavin, how they met through mutual friends, how he made her feel safe, how the house they bought together still smelled like him. And then she asked me quietly, almost too casually, do you have anyone in your life? I shook my head. No, I've been focused on work, bought a house, settled down, just no one ever really felt right, I guess. She nodded like she understood. Sometimes it feels like I lived a whole life with Gavin, and now I'm back at zero. Like I'm 22 again, only tired. I hesitated. Do you regret marrying him? She looked up sharply, then softened. No, not for a second, but I didn't expect life to split itself into a before and after. That part I wasn't ready for. I could have said something deep or comforting, but instead I said what felt honest. I think none of us are. She looked at me then fully. For a long few seconds, neither of us said anything. Then she glanced at her watch. I should get home soon. People might still stop by. Of course, I said, sliding out of the booth. Outside, the sun was low, casting orange light across the quiet street. Thank you, she said, for coming for this. I didn't know I needed it until now. I nodded. Anytime, Ara. Really? She opened her car door, then paused. Cow, she said, looking over the roof of her car. Yeah. Don't disappear again. And with that, she got in and drove away. A week went by, maybe a little more. I tried not to count the days, but I knew. Every morning when I got up, I'd make coffee, glance at my phone, and wonder what Mara was doing. Whether she'd slept, whether she'd eaten, whether the silence in that house had grown heavier. I wasn't planning to reach out. I didn't have her number. I hadn't asked for it, but something nodded at me. That moment when she looked over her car at me and said, "Don't disappear again." It stuck with me, played on repeat. Friday morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I opened my laptop to check work emails, but I didn't click on any of them. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes, then closed the lid. No meetings, nothing urgent. I took a breath, grabbed my keys, and got in the car. It was a 2-hour drive to her town, the same road I'd taken to the funeral. This time, no tie, just a hoodie, jeans, and a grocery bag with 2 small containers. Some soup I'd made the night before in a loaf of sourdough I'd picked up from a baker near my house. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even know if she'd be home, but I figured if she wasn't, I'd just leave the food with a note and drive back. When I got to her place, I didn't get out of the car right away. I sat across the street again like I had the first time, except now I knew what the inside of her world looked like. It was quiet, no cars in the driveway. I waited 30 minutes, then 45. I scrolled through my phone, watched two teenagers walk by with iced coffees and headphones. Just when I was about to leave, a blue sedan turned onto the street and pulled into her driveway. It was her. I got out of my car as she stepped out, holding a paper bag and a small bouquet of white flowers. She looked up, startled for just a second, then smiled. Calculations. Hey, I said, sorry for just showing up. No, it's okay, she said. You've been sitting here for a little while. I admitted I wasn't sure if you'd be home. I didn't want to bother you. She walked over slowly, looking at me like she was trying to read something behind my eyes. You drove all this way. I shrugged. I brought soup. She laughed, not loudly, but genuinely. That might be the nicest thing anyone's done for me all week. I followed her up the front path. The house was modest, but clean with a wide porch and pale green shutters. She unlocked the door and pushed it open. Come in, she said. I stepped inside. It smelled faintly of fresh flowers and something else, something old and familiar, like paper and wood and dust that had settled over time. The living room was cozy, lived in, a few framed photos on the mantel, her and Gavin in a field somewhere, another with friends at what looked like a wedding. A single candle burned on the coffee table, half-melted Itchins this way, she said, setting her groceries down. I handed her the bag with the soup and bread. She peeked inside. You really made this last night, I said. It's probably better today. That's how soup works, right? She smiled. You're the first person who's come over without looking like they were bracing for emotional disaster. We sat at the small table by her kitchen window. She made coffee, strong black, and we sat for a while, sipping quietly. I asked if she was doing okay. Not the polite version, but the real one. She thought for a moment, then said, I'm not sure. I feel like I'm floating through someone else's life, she added. Like, I walk around in it, but nothing really touches me. I can't imagine, I said honestly. You know, she continued, the weirdest part isn't the crying. It's when I laugh at something dumb and then immediately feel guilty. Like, how dare I find anything funny? You're still here, I said. You're still allowed to feel something. She looked out the window. That's the hard part. Remembering I'm still a person. We talked for an hour. She told me about her job, remote work with a design firm, mostly freelance. Said she hadn't touched a project in weeks. She told me she hadn't been sleeping much. Nights were the worst. Too quiet. At one point, her eyes landed on a photo frame nearby, just out of reach on the counter. She looked at it for a long moment, then turned it face down. I hate how that makes me feel, she said quietly, like I'm betraying him. You're not, I said. You're just breathing. That's not betrayal. She didn't answer, but I could tell she was holding back tears. Not because she didn't want to cry, because she'd already done it so many times. She was just tired of it. I help her unpack the groceries. Nothing heavy. Fruit, tea, a bottle of red wine. She said she didn't even like. She offered me a second cup of coffee, and I said yes. Not because I needed it, just because I didn't want to leave yet. We sat in the living room. She curled up on the far side of the couch, knees tucked under her. I sat in the chair across from her, holding the mug with both hands. She asked me more about my life, what I did on weekends if I saw my family often. I told her about my parents, about how my mom still sends me texts, reminding me to wear sunscreen. She laughed again. It felt easy, unexpectedly easy. I stood to leave a little after 5. The sun was already dipping low, and she walked me to the door. "Thanks for coming," she said. "Really?" I didn't realize how much I needed to see someone who doesn't talk to me like I'm fragile. "You're not," I said. "You're just going through hell." She nodded, then paused. "Will I see you again if you want to?" She didn't answer immediately, just leaned against the doorframe and said, "I think I do." I got in my car, pulled away from the curb, and looked at her house in the rearview mirror. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like a ghost in someone else's story. I kept visiting. At first, it was every other week, and it became once a week, and it stopped being planned at all. Some days I just finish work, check the clock, and realize I didn't want to be in my own house. I text her, "Mind if I drop by?" And almost always the reply would come fast. Of course, doors open. There was never a conversation about what we were doing. It wasn't romantic. Not then. We didn't touch, didn't flirt, didn't cross any lines. I brought her soup, groceries, sometimes just coffee. She talked. I listened. Sometimes we'd sit and say nothing at all, but there was something in the silence that started to feel different. It wasn't grief anymore, or not only grief. It was warmth, familiarity, safety. She stopped flinching when she mentioned Gavin's name. She started laughing more genuinely. I remember one afternoon in late March. We were watching a movie on her couch, something dumb and light, and she laughed so hard she dropped her tea all over her blanket. We both looked at the spill, then at each other, and just lost it. Not because it was funny, but because it felt normal. And I realized that day that I wasn't just showing up out of kindness anymore. I wasn't just being supportive. I want to be there. I look forward to it. To her, I hadn't felt that way in years. I didn't know if she felt it too. I didn't want to push or confuse what she was going through. So I stayed quiet, played it safe until one Sunday afternoon. She invited me over for lunch, said she was trying a new soup recipe and wanted a second opinion. I brought bread from that same bakery I always stopped at. When I arrived, she was already barefoot in the kitchen stirring a pot. She looked relaxed, comfortable, like herself. We sat at the table and ate. It was good soup, even if she insisted it was missing something. Afterward, we moved to the couch, same as always. She poured us each a glass of wine, even though it was still light outside. At one point, she got quiet, staring at the bookshelf across the room. "Cal," she said slowly, "do you ever feel like your life split in two? Like everything before and everything after?" I nodded. "Yeah, I think that's how I felt when I lost my brother. Different kind of loss, I know. But yeah," she turned to face me. "When I lost Gavin, I thought that meant I'd never feel anything again. Not really. That all the good stuff was over. And then you showed up. I didn't say anything. I couldn't." My throat tightened. Not with panic, just with something too big for words. "You didn't ask for anything," she continued. "You didn't try to fix me. You just showed up again and again." And somewhere in all of that, I started to remember what it felt like to be seen. I looked at her, then really looked. "Mara," I said quietly, "I don't want to make this harder for you." "It's not harder," she replied. "It's the first thing that hasn't felt hard." She moved closer, not much, just enough. Her hand found mine gently, My heart was racing, but I didn't pull away. I didn't move at all. I used to think she said that love was one big dramatic moment. Fireworks, sparks. But now I think maybe it's just the person who keeps showing up even when there's nothing in it for them. I didn't know what to say, so I said the truth. I was in love with you in college, probably more than I understood at the time. You never noticed, and that's okay. But I never stopped thinking about you. And when I heard about Gavin, I didn't come because I thought something would happen. I came because I could not. She nodded. Her eyes were full of something I hadn't seen before. Clarity. I know, she said, and maybe that's why I trust you now. She leaned her head on my shoulder just for a moment. I didn't move. We just sat like that still with the soft sound of a clock ticking on the wall behind us. That night, I didn't stay. I kissed her forehead, told her to sleep well, and drove home in silence. But everything had changed. Not dramatically, not suddenly, quietly, naturally. And I knew deep down that whatever this was wasn't temporary. It was beginning. It's been almost 2 years since the funeral. Sometimes when I wake up in the morning and see her sleeping beside me, hair messy, face calm, I still can't quite believe all of this is real, that everything led here. After that afternoon on her couch, the pace of things didn't change overnight. We still took it slow. She still needed space sometimes, and I gave it to her. But something shifted. A door opened and we both stepped through it. I remember the first time we held hands in public. It was at a bookstore downtown. No drama, no hesitation. She just reached over, took my hand, and kept walking. That moment stuck with me more than any kiss. We didn't announce anything. There was no "now we're together" conversation. It happened the way all the best things do. Gradually, then all at once. About 8 months in, I asked her to move in with me. I wasn't sure how she'd take it. She'd build a life in that house with Gavin. I didn't want to feel like I was stepping into his space. But before I even finished the sentence, she smiled and said, "Yeah, I think it's time." She gave away most of her furniture, kept a few things, a bookshelf, some framed art, and a yellow coffee mug with a chip on the rim that she insisted made more hers. I moved the guest room furniture into storage and built her a little workspace by the window. I still remember the first morning we both made coffee in that tiny kitchen and just stood there barefoot, smiling like idiots. We didn't talk about marriage for a while. Neither of us felt the need to rush. But one Sunday morning, while we were sitting on the porch drinking coffee, I said it. No speech, no ring, just the words. "Do you think we should make this official?" She didn't answer right away, just leaned into my arm and said, "I already feel like we are." 2 months later, we got married. Small ceremony, backyard, just 20 people. Her sister, a couple of my coworkers, our old college friend Cassie, who cried more than anyone. Mara wore a soft cream color dress. I wore a blue suit. We wrote our own vows, but barely made it through them. I don't remember half of what I said. I just remember her eyes. After the wedding, we didn't go on a big honeymoon. Just rented a cabin in the woods for a weekend and left our phones off. We read books, cooked pasta, slept in, and talked about things that for a long time had been too hard to say. One night, lying on the couch with her head on my chest, she whispered, "I never thought I'd get a second chance." I told her the truth. You weren't my second. You were always the one. And then 2 weeks ago, it happened. I'd just gotten home from work. The house smelled like something sweet, maybe vanilla or cinnamon. I set down my keys, dropped my bag, and walked into the kitchen. She was standing by the sink, holding something in both hands. She didn't look at me right away. "Hey," I said, "you okay?" She turned slowly. Her face was red, not panic, not sadness, something else. Without saying a word, she walked over and handed me the stick. At first, I didn't get it, just looked down. One blue line, then two. I looked up. She was already crying. I didn't think I could. She started, voice shaking. Not after before. We never tried, Gavin and I. But I assumed. I thought something was wrong with me. I couldn't speak, just pulled her in and held her. She buried her face into my neck and whispered, "We're having a baby, Cal. I think it's a boy." We stood there in the middle of the kitchen, her fingers gripping the back of my shirt, and everything around us seemed to go still. There was no panic, no fear, just this overwhelming wave of rightness. Later that night, we lay in bed, her head on my shoulder, her hand resting over her stomach. "I'm scared," she said softly. "I know," I said. "Me too, but I'm also really happy." "Yeah," I said. "Me too." We've started painting a room across the hall. Nothing wild, just soft greens and warm whites. We don't have a crib yet, don't have a name, but we've got time. And now, when I look back at college, at those years in between, at the funeral, I understand something I didn't before. Love doesn't always show up when you want it to. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it takes the long way around. Sometimes it arrives at the worst moment and ends up being the only thing that saves you. Mara and I didn't begin the way most people do. We weren't each other's firsts, but we became each other's finally. And that, I think, is what really matters.